everyone, it's Judy Warner. Guess what day it is today? It's day 3 of the launch of the all-new Ecosystem podcast. Thanks so much for joining us again today, and a heartfelt thanks to all of you that have reached out to me personally and engaged with us on LinkedIn and across social media. You're why I love doing this work, and we're so glad to have you re-engage with us. Will you do me one more huge favor? I need you to go over to the-ecosystem.com and sign up for our community there. We have so much more planned for you that's coming your way. I don't want you to miss any of it. Another shout out and thanks to Signal Integrity Journal for helping make this podcast possible. Today's guest is part 3 of our IMS pre-game blitz in celebration of next week's International Microwave Symposium that's being held in Denver. We're going to talk to Steve McGeary at Samtec. Steve has a rich background in connector technology, and he explains how Samtec has moved from 100% high-speed digital into the RF space because of the evolution of technology and the needs of 5G, automotive, IoT, and smart homes, and so much more. He also talks about really innovative things they do with custom connectors and solutions that they build with our customers, and also off-the-shelf things that you can get readily. Best of all, he shares lots of technical resources that I'll put in the show notes below, so don't forget to go check that out. Thanks for being with us again today. Now let's jump into our conversation with Steve McGeary of Samtec. Hi, Steve. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Ecosystem Podcast. We're excited to learn about you, Samtec, and what you're doing at IMS this year.
Good afternoon. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for jumping in to our exciting launch week. We're calling it this the IMS pregame blitz. So you're part of our launch blitz, and we really appreciate you being here. Well, in past lives, I've worked with Samtec a bit, but I really didn't know a lot about you or the RF line, and so I thought we'd talk about that today. So why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself and about Samtec, and your role there at Samtec?
Sure. My title is basically Director of RF Business Development and Product Management, but I've been at Samtec now since September 2018. I had a company called Precision Connector Inc. with a couple of partners, and we were acquired by Samtec in 2018. And so I joined them, actually signed on for 2 years, and that's now expired, but such a great company to work for. And as I told my boss, as long as I can contribute and I'm not ready to retire yet, I plan to stay because it's a great company to work for. So that's what brought me to Samtec. But one of the reasons that they acquired us is Samtec traditionally was not an RF company. They kind of dabbled in RF for about a decade or so, mainly their customer base, which was commercial-based, high-speed digital customers. As the demand for faster speeds and more data being transferred, there was a need for RF for doing a lot of the testing. So with that in mind, Samtec really made a concerted effort about 5 or 6 years ago and dedicated themselves and put resources into going into the RF microwave business and industry. And now, as of today, we are completely vertically integrated we manufacture all our products, we design all our products, and we've got a team of engineers that we've acquired over the past 5 or 6 years that make us a formidable microwave company to deal with in the industry.
So you mentioned you can do design and all that. Does Samtec do custom designs as well as off the shelf? Can you tell us a little bit about your product mix?
We do. We have a standard roadmap of products that we're trying to develop and get out there. As you know, again, what we call standards. We'll sell these connectors to anyone and put it on our website, etc. And being relatively new into the industry, that roadmap is pretty busy and pretty dense, and the amount of products is phenomenal that we've developed over the last 4 or 5 years. But with that in mind, we know the industry, and we know that what we get is somebody says, hey, you have this over here, you have this connector, we'd like it, but we need this. And we are very accommodating. We can do custom work. We enjoy doing custom work. And we've got a team of engineers, so we do have resources that are explicitly dedicated to handling custom requests as well.
I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I think it might be interesting to our listeners if you have an example of kind of a case study where you did something like that.
Yeah, we have a military customer that we dealt with that they deal with phased array radars, and they had an application, and it required there was very little space. It was a master card and then several daughter cards that had to plug into it. A lot of different electronic channels that had to transmit microwave signals. So, with the amount of real estate that we were basically given to deal with, we have been thinking about doing condensed connectors where we took one of our smaller connectors, which is called an SMPM. It's a standard connector that's out in the industry, but we wanted to use that connector interface, but put it in a gang block where we could gang several of them. In the case of, we have several different combinations where we offer 1x2s, 1x4, 6 and 8, and then 2x2, 4, 6 and 8 combinations of that interface, but in a gang block. So it's a much denser package, and it gives you a lot of connections and a lot of connectivity in a very small amount of space. And we offer that both for board-to-board applications and for cable-to-board applications. But that came about via a customer and a custom request, blending in with a standard product that we were thinking about doing. And now we actually have that product on our website, and we'll be promoting it this year at IMS. We call it our Magnum RF is what we call that's the name for the series. But we're going to be promoting all of that product at IMS in Denver, so you'll be able to see it there.
So maybe for more my education than our listeners, but when you say gang block, I'm picturing a ribbon cable, multiple heads. Is that what you're talking about? Is that what gang blocking is?
Well, by gang blocking means that most of the time a connector interface and the connector itself, the guts of the connector is inside an outer connector body.
Right.
That has a threading mechanism, or in some cases a push-on mechanism, which this connector is a push-on, that mates to another connector out there. What happens is with those, when you start getting those connector bodies into a small space of real estate, they start getting to where space is limited because of the outer body. So what we did is we took that outer configuration, and then we took the guts of the standard connector and we put them in a much smaller package, but we put multiple interfaces or multiple connectors within the same housing, so that it's about half the space. In other words, if you took 8 SMPM connectors and lined them up on a board and mated them next to each other, that same 8 connections we could do in about half the amount of space with the ganged block that we use.
And is space consideration the biggest part of that, or not necessarily performance?
It is. I mean, right now there's a lot of drivers that are driving really all microwave connectors, cable assemblies, et cetera, are being driven by frequency. Frequencies are all going up higher and higher. And then size is also a big factor. There's less and less size available for these high frequencies and what these people are using this for. So that's become a premium. So all of the new products, not just from us, but from our competitors as well, are really focused around trying to get the best performance up to the highest frequency in the smallest package possible for the different applications that are out there.
It's a relentless drive. It just never stops. I always think, we've topped out. That's it. No, we always seem to find a way to keep busting through these things. You know, it's been a while. I'm sort of re-entering the RF space. It was something that I was part of for quite a while, 10 plus years. And something I was noticing more and more is because of IoT, electric vehicles, so maybe self-driving cars. I don't know. I think you can talk to this better than I can. But I think it's the thing I've observed it's dragging people who weren't part of RF and microwave into that space, kind of kicking and screaming. And it
It's not.
seems like there's a lot of sort of pitfalls along the way. Is that something you're seeing, and kind of how do you address that?
Well, absolutely. It's huge. I mean, I've been in the microwave industry now since the early 90s, so quite a long time. And, most RF microwave companies were focused strictly, for the most part, in the mil-aero business. That,
Exactly.
that was the
Yeah.
biggest user of our products, and
Yeah.
especially in microwave frequencies versus
Yeah, you
standard
bet.
RF. And but now that's not the case. The market's expanded. There's much more commercial uses for microwave products than what used to be. And it's not just one market. It's you've got the you've got high speed computing that requires
Mm,
testing and higher frequencies. You've got all the demands of 5G, which is there's a bunch of
yeah.
overlap within the markets too. But because of 5G, again, and that's one of the main reasons that when we talk about these different markets, that's what pushed Samtec into the microwave world.
Oh,
Was
I see.
they really came from strictly a high speed digital market, and now with everything that's going on, you got autonomous cars, smart cities, smart homes. Everything's interrelated now. Everything's higher in frequency, and with the technology today, it's really an expansive market now that the microwave world has to deal with. Because of that, some of the problems are a lot of the people from the digital world look at microwave. It's new to them. It's the terminology isn't always the same. The way that they look at it isn't always the same. And for me, working at Samtec, which was basically strictly a high speed digital company until they got around into the RF and microwave world, it's been a learning curve for both me, and it's given me a chance to work with and teach a lot of the high speed digital guys about the microwave world. So it's the meshing of these two worlds. And from an engineering aspect, you find a lot of engineers now that dabble in both worlds now. It's amazing the complexity and the what the engineers that we deal with, they're usually more one than the other. They're usually high speed digital centric, or they're
Yes.
more RF and microwave centric.
Mm-hmm.
Most of those engineers from both worlds seem to have an understanding, a general understanding now, and an interest in learning more about some of the other markets and some of the other worlds that they weren't accustomed to, say, 15, 20 years ago.
So how, I'm sure when, maybe from either your biz dev role or product management, you said you're learning sort of in both directions from each other. Like, I'm thinking of our listeners, like if they're just starting to dabble in that, like, do you have some advice, some general advice? Um, like, where do you go onboard this, right? Is it mostly through suppliers like Samtec? Like, how do they onboard this knowledge?
Well, there are a bunch of online tools and applications and information it's there. And I mean, like for instance, the Microwave Journal, they have webinars and podcasts all the time on specific topics. So you've got that, but then you also have Samtec's one company, but there's other companies as well. Most of the websites today have a wealth of knowledge on their websites, which we have on our website. Everything from some of the blogs and some of the webinars that we've done, as well as characterization reports, as well as just tutorials on bridging that gap between the digital and the microwave world. So there's a tremendous amount of knowledge out there if you just have the motivation to go out and find it. For anybody who's new into the world, that's
Right.
where, and of course, that's what I've been doing. I mean, I've been spending a lot of my time since I joined Samtec learning about the high speed digital world, which is something that I was not accustomed when I was strictly selling cable connectors back in the day. So
Right. Well, it's kind of exciting if you're good at learning fast and learning from each other. Um, so the promise of this podcast is to help bridge some of those gaps, which is why I asked you about it. And so the promise of the podcast is to educate, connect, and equip. So would you send me the links to your resources? And I can certainly, Signal Integrity Journal, as you know, is our media sponsor. So I can connect sort of more people to that publication, but I will also put Microwave Journal in there because I think that those are some good resources. So if you could do that for our listeners, I sure appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely will.
Okay. Before I let you go, I wanted to know specifically for maybe our listeners that are attending IMS, what specifically is your focus this year? It feels like the first full strength post COVID IMS, and I'm really excited. And for our listeners, IMS is International Microwave Symposium, so it's all RF, microwave, and millimeter wave focused. So, what are your goals this year?
Well, we've got a whole bunch of new product out there that we want to
Okay.
obviously show at the show, and we call it our Magnum RF, but the gained product that I talked to you about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to be exhibiting that. We've also got a lot of new cable and cable assemblies that we're promoting all the way up to 90 gigahertz and 110 gigahertz product that we have
Wow.
in development. So we've got all of our high frequency stuff. We also have we have a new product that's really an R&D project right now. It's not released. We're not selling it to a specific customer, although we are working with one in development. But it's a flexible waveguide, which again, when you talked about, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but you were talking about how do the two worlds collide. Samtec's
Yeah.
a very flat company, and we have guys that are in another engineering group that had an idea, and they came up with this flexible waveguide, which is really an RF microwave product. But it actually
Wait,
came
what's
out
a
of another group.
flexible waveguide? I don't get it. I'm trying
Okay.
to picture that in my mind.
Well, wait. When you think of waveguide, typically a waveguide, it looks like plumbing. It's
Right.
hard metal, and it's very rigid, but it's hollow, and it's a transmission line without any center conductor. It's basically an air line that the signal transmits
Okay.
from point A to point Z. Well, what we
Okay.
did was we took a cable, and it has a dielectric, which is in this case it's a foam dielectric that we use, but we took a cable, we removed the center conductor, so it's a waveguide. There's no cable center conductor to it,
I
but it can
see.
transmit the signal, but it's bendable, it's flexible. So it gives you a
Mm.
lot more flexibility that a standard waveguide won't do, but it goes much higher in frequency. The waveguides that we're talking about, right now we have one in development that's going to go to 90, but after that, the next band that we'll be looking at is going up to about 145 gigahertz. So
That's
it's going
crazy.
beyond where standard coax can't go, and give you great product with low loss.
That's amazing. Well, as you know, right? The how do you say it? That air is the, fastest path.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you're taking advantage of that, and then making it flexible, which I imagine has space saving capabilities and all kinds of stuff.
But as I mentioned, this came out of a completely different engineering group, and this is where sometimes thinking outside of the box. Typical, you've got these guys, and they've got tremendous experience. They're very knowledgeable engineers, but they look at things from what they have experience in, and then you take this other group of guys that overlap each other, and they come up with something that is completely unique that nobody ever has done before. So we're pretty excited about it. Again, there's still a lot of development that has to go before it's a viable product, but we are going to have that at IMS. We will be showing it. We have a demo, so we encourage people to come by and take a look at it. We can give you more information about it at that time.
That's exciting. Well, Steve, I look forward to seeing you there and in person. I think we're all excited to, get out of our, home offices and all of that and actually see each other. And so much development's been going on, but to be able to see that stuff physically is going to be a fun time. Um, for our listeners, thank you for joining us for this conversation. I promise I will get those links from Steve. So if you're not attending IMS, no worries. We'll have some webinars, resource blogs, maybe some papers. The one thing I've always really appreciated about Samtec is the amount of technical resources they have. And I've worked with different business units like Isvan Novak on power integrity, some of the high-speed digital guys, and everywhere you go, they spend a lot of time preparing really good technical resources. So I'll make sure and share those. Steve, thanks so much for joining me today. I really
Thank you, Judy.
look forward to seeing you, and you can show me all your toys at your booth.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks here.
To our audience, thanks so much for joining us for this launch week of the Ecosystem Podcast. I trust that you enjoyed this conversation with myself and Steve McGeary. Hope it was useful to you. Make sure you go check out the show notes, and don't forget to subscribe at the doubleecosystem.com. We've got free resources for you to celebrate this week's launch week. We appreciate you being there. Hope to see you at IMS. If not, remember to always stay connected to the ecosystem.